Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. It's been a while since I've done a Penn Beachmaster. This one just came into the shop and I thought, well, either I can get better at doing what I'm doing, or maybe there's a lot of folks that don't search my library but would see this one for the first time. So we're going to go ahead and do that. This is the 155 Beachmaster, and you've had several iterations of this. You had a 160, which was a narrow frame, and then you had a Surfmaster, which was basically this reel with a single take-apart system. And the Surfmaster came in a 100, 150, 200, and 250 size. And the first three sizes, the 100 through the 200, shared the mechanicals of this reel, with the exception of it being a single take-apart side plate. But interior-wise, the main gears, everything else were the same. So if you're watching this video and you have any of those other units, well, you can certainly learn how to service those reels in addition to watching me service this one. Well, this reel was introduced in the 1950s. It's been around a long time, and it's been a very dependable medium weight saltwater reel. It's perfect for using from a boat, from shore. It casts nicely, and it just needs a little bit of service here. We can see that there's a lot of old dried grease on the chrome parts. We're taking care of that with a metal polish. It's an automotive chrome polish. It's made by Turtle Wax, and some 4.0 steel wool, which is a polishing steel wool. It's not a very aggressive scarring steel wool, which you might use, for example, to clean copper pipes before soldering or something like that. Does anybody solder anymore? I know we have shark bites these days. I'm not sure anybody solders anymore, but you would use a little bit more aggressive one to do that. Okay, I've taken off some of the exterior parts. We're going to continue with that, and as I do, I'm going to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. If you like the art of reel repair, if you like learning about it as a hobby, if you're curious about fishing reels in general, or if you just have nothing to watch on television these days, well, if you subscribe to my channel, you'll see all the things I do with fishing equipment and the fishing industry, and maybe I'll even do a reel that you own. Here's a question I get all the time. It's about these plastic spools, and some folks are of the opinion that this plastic spool was introduced to save money, kind of a cheap version of the reel. Well, they may have been $1 or $2 cheaper. Well, probably not even $1 in a day, probably 70 cents in a day, cheaper than the metal spools. But that wasn't why these were introduced. These were introduced to enable you to cast further. There's two things you're going to notice with the plastic spool. The first one is you have a wider arbor below. That's because when you're casting, you really want the line to come off per revolution to be more. And well, when you get to the outer portion of the spool, the line is a couple of inches longer per wrap than it is on the core. So you don't need that inner core there. And the other part with the plastic spool is that it is more lightweight than the metal spool. If it's lightweight, that's less friction, and if it's less friction, you can throw it further. It'll spin faster and go spinning longer than if it was a metal spool. So mystery solved, in case you were wondering why is there a plastic spool there, and in case you were thinking that the only reason was to save $1 or $2 or maybe 75 cents back in the day. Very dependable reel. It's one of the first reels I bought one of my daughters when she decided it was time for her to go on a boat and do some ocean fishing. And you know what? It's as good today as it was all those years ago. So I'm taking the 6 side plate screws out of this reel, and they are 2 different sizes. The 2 that are below here are shorter screws, and that's so that they don't stick through the side plate. Of course, here these screws have been replaced because they're sticking through. Go figure. Either that or somebody's just put the wrong screws in the wrong place. That happens all the time, and I'm not seeing that, and it's almost impossible to find those shorter screws these days. I think they may have been discontinued. But as you look through on the other side, we'll take this off, you can notice that these 2 are shorter and they're not sticking through that reel seat. Before I get done with this reel, I will try to see if I can find shorter screws that are the right ones for this. Why do I want to do that? Well, when those screws stick through the reel seat below, they can catch the line And if they catch the line, they're going to cause, at a minimum, a snarl, and a maximum, they're going to break the line off. All right, we're just using a little bit of that steel wool and that metal polish just to knock off some of the rough spots on the cross posts. Believe it or not, you can still get many of these chrome pieces and parts if you wanted to restore a reel. There are folks out there that send me the reels because they were their dad's reel, or they were the first reel that they purchased, or they've been a family heirloom or whatever, and they do want to go about doing as much of the restoration, making it look like new as possible, and they ask me to go buy those pieces and parts. It's not economical, that's for sure, but if it's a family heirloom that you're looking to restore, well, then the price is secondary to the memory and whatever it is that the purpose is there that you're doing it. All right, I'm just going to clean off the residual that's left from that polish. We've cleaned up the reel seat. We took that green corrosion off of it. And all you need to do here, there's a side plate bearing over here. I did put grease in that one. Most of the time I don't grease bearings, but I know that the side of the spool here is going to contact that, and I want to make sure that it has a nice free spin to it. So we'll put the spool back in. I'm going to set that assembly off to the side. I've been putting my pieces and parts that I take off in a parts tray. It's a fast food container. You can go fancy, or you can go just bottoms of milk jugs, plastic containers, dog bowls, whatever you want to use for parts, that's fine. One more piece I want to clean up here. That's the side trim ring on the gear side. And we'll open up the gear side. I'll show you how to service that. My initial thoughts on this reel is it's going to need drag washers to be replaced. These reels are old. The original leather washers that they put into these reels generally are either worn or dried out and cracked, or both. And judging by the condition of what I'm seeing here, my guess is we will need to replace them. If we do, we will. If we don't need to replace them, we won't. And we'll continue the service with that. All right, so I did two things. I removed the 4 bridges posts, and I also make sure that we're raised on that jack on the inside. That makes getting the bridge out easier. Once you get all 4 of those screws out, notice that there's 2 different size screws. There's a fully threaded screw and there's a partially threaded screw. Partially threaded screws go up top. If you haven't had the opportunity to do so, take pictures along the way. That's going to tell you where the pieces and parts are, so that when you disassemble a reel and reassemble it, if you need a reference, those pictures will be very helpful. We should just be able to push the bridge through and out now. I have my hand cupped. There's a spring on the other side of this for the anti-reverse dog. I want to make sure that I get it here and not have to go looking for it as it bounces out. All right, well, this has got a flat spring in it. There's 2 types of anti-reverse dog springs. One is the flat spring and the other is a coil spring. I believe that the coil spring replaced the flat spring in and around 1957 or 58 or thereabouts. So that gives you a little bit of a dating on the reel itself. It also tells you what you need to do to service it. Take a look at the internals. We want to clean that up. This is a pretty clean reel. I'm going to use a penetrating oil as a solvent and as a degreaser. And then I use a variety of things to clean it up. I'm using a cotton swab to get into those kind of hard to find spots, or hard to get to spots. And mop all of that up. Then I'm going to use a paper towel just to wipe it. Now you notice I just took the piece offline. I don't want to get anywhere near these pieces that I've left on my table. As a good practice, I probably should have just taken all of these and put them into the parts tray, so let's do that right now. That way I don't risk knocking them about as we go about cleaning this reel. If you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, just leave them in my comment section to this video. I do try to respond to those questions when asked, and if I can provide you some guidance or some help along the way, I'll try to do that for you. So one of the questions may be, what did I just put on this scrubby here? Well, I put on a rod and reel cleaner. It's Penn's Precision Rod and Reel Cleaner, not because it's a Penn reel, just because it works. It's kind of a 2-in-1. It's a little bit of a cleaner to get some of that stubborn stuff off. I find that it does shine up the Penn reels in particular. It doesn't do much for UV damage. There's kind of a wax component to it in here. I guess that makes it pretty for a while, and then eventually, like everything that's got UV damage, it will fade. But this does a nice job. As you can see, kind of cleaned that up nicely. Another indication with these reels on age is if you have an etched side plate on the back. This one does not have the etched side plate. The etched side plates were around in the 40s and early 50s. They usually depicted scenes of somebody doing some fishing somewhere, maybe on a trolling boat, maybe on using a surf caster and the like. And those came before the solid side plates. And you'll find some that have Penn on there. You'll find some that are a little bit more embossed and the like. That's done. Let's go over and service the bridge. And again, I'm fully expecting that these drag washers are going to need to be replaced, that they're the old kind of leather type. But if this reel's been maintained, it may be that the drag washers are the newer version. Maybe somebody replaced them over time. All right, I just wiped off the gear sleeve. There's a pin here that you want to push through. I use a pick to do that. You can see that the pin has come through. I don't know I guess we did push it through enough. And you want to clean the shaft of the bridge. And you want to clean underneath it where that shaft is going to spin against the bridge. And you also want to make sure that it's clean where that anti-reverse dog is going to operate. If they're not clean there, it's going to cause a deterioration in performance. It may cause the anti-reverse to stick and not be functional. And if that's the case, well, you just spent an awful lot of time servicing a reel only to find out that you should have done just a little bit more, and it cost you in the end. So we've got that clean. I'm going to take that cotton swab again. We're going to run it through the gear sleeve to pick up any residual stuff that's there. And one of the things that I've noticed is that the original washer on this, well, that's cracked. So let's go over to the drag washers, because I would expect the same. These are leather washers, circa 1950s, and I think we're just going to do a service to this individual. You can see how they're cracked, brittle, and breaking. They're useless. All right, so get rid of those. I'm going to turn the camera off for a moment. I'm going to go get some new washers, and we'll be right back. So we're back with these. We have the new modern HT100s. So let's start the assembly. We put a little bit of grease on there. We're going to put our gear sleeve back on now. We're going to push that pin in. And when we push that pin in, we want to make sure that it's fully seated, that it's not on that ridge at all. Next up then is a hard washer, which goes next. Now we're going to check the main gear. Let's bring that paper towel over. I want to drag a hard bristle brush through that gear. I want to pull out any of the old greases. You can see how it's kind of pulling the old greases out onto the paper towel. See flaking going on with the metal finish on the back gear, not important. And if you find that there's something that your brush may have missed, just go in with a pick. Use a safety pin, use a pick like this. This is a Harbor Freight dollar bin item. And just kind of pull it through. That way you'll know you have a good mesh with the gear. Okay, we're going to put some grease onto the main gear, and then we'll load up the bridge assembly with the new drag washers. Get this thing out there fishing again. Alright, so we put the hard washer on, the main gear goes on next. We have 3 new drag washers. I'm going to use Cal's Universal Drag Grease. Don't race out and buy it if you don't have it. Use your Penn Precision Reel Grease for that. Make sure that your washers, your metal washers, are clean, free of debris. These are clean. This one has got just a little bit of something on it. So use that steel wool again. This one's tarnished up top. Sometimes the tarnish doesn't come off. Don't worry about it. It's the top washer. So you have two washers here that are kind of rectangular in nature. They're called keyed washers. They go high and low. So the first one of the drag washers is in. Here's your second one. We'll do the same thing. We're going to wipe that down. Now, I've been asked, can you run these dry? You can run these drag washers dry, but I find that the grease does allow for a little bit more permanence to it, I guess. Is that the right word? Keeps them lubricated. There's nothing, the lubrication isn't there for slip or anything. It's there to keep them flexible and keep them from drying out like you just saw with these washers here. If you don't have the lubrication, well, they snap just like that under tension. All right, those are all for a different day. Let's go take care of the other three pieces that are in the drive set. And we'll put it back together. We'll see how we did. First up then, we're going to clean the yoke here. Hold the yoke because, well, it looks like the yoke that would have been attached to, or oxen would have been attached to. And it holds the pinion gear, and this is called the jack. I haven't figured out why it's called the jack, but maybe because it goes up and down like an auto jack. I'm not sure. All these years I've never asked that question. All right, grease onto the shoulder of the yoke. We've checked the teeth of the pinion gear. We've inspected them, cleaned them. Now that's back together. There's two yoke springs that go in next. And there's also a side plate bearing over here that you want to get the grease into. Take your two side plate springs, they go into the cavities. Lay the yoke on top of it. There's a, on that pinion gear, there's a slot. The slot faces towards you. That's going to be the spool pickup. And then move your free spool eccentric to the top position. Take the jack, loop it around the top of that, and make sure that you're inside the stud on the case. So that's how your yoke assembly is supposed to look. Now we'll take the bridge assembly, push down on the pinion gear, and load from underneath, rotate it halfway. Find one of your fully threaded screws, bring that into the corner on the right side if you're looking at it, facing you. Take the dog with the longer side is the up side, just like that. And then find that flat spring. Now this one's got a little bend in it, that's all right. Leave it just as it is. There's still plenty of spring left in there. Find the post, and you're going to wrap the spring around that post and lay it on top of the dog. So that might be hard to see because the color is the same, but one part of the flat spring is laying here. Here's your post, and I don't know if you can see it, but the other part of the flat spring is right there. Once you've done that, rotate the rest of the bridge all the way around. Make sure that your pinion gear comes through the hole. If it doesn't, do what I just did there. Grab something and just kind of tilt it a little bit, and the springs will push it through. And then tighten that screw down a little bit, not all the way, because you still have 3 bridge screws that you have to put in. And from time to time, those things get a little temperamental in alignment. In this case, I guess it's been aligned for some time now because that second one went right in. Notice I go in an X pattern. I don't like to go in a circular pattern, top and bottom, at the same time, because that can cause the bridge to tilt a little bit, and then it's harder to get the other side in. Once you get that last one in, go back and tighten them all. And then if we turn the pinion gear now, everything should be working and spinning right. I like to put that into the off position now, or the on for free spool, before I go any further. Speaking of that, I'm going to turn the camera off for a moment. I'm going to see if I can find the shorter screws which belong on the bridge. If I can't, well, we're out of luck, but we'll see. Okay, well, I found 2 screws. They are shorter. Whether they're the exact right ones or not, I don't know. But they will be better protruding than what happened with the other one. When you do these spools, always make sure that you check the shoulders on this. I've seen a lot of trap line and things in there that for whatever reason people have done the reels and never checked off on that, and then found out that, well, it's not working properly. Okay, when you put your side plate screws in, alternate the locations of the side plate screws. Don't go around in a circle, just like we were doing in the bridge. Take one on one side, go over to the other side so that you can square this up. These would be the longer screws now. And then go down and put one on the bottom. And that's going to make sure that your side plate goes on square. Let's see how we did with this screw. Well, this screw is still going to be a little bit long, I think. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit long. That's the best we're going to do. So we got rid of a very long one. You can see just a little bit of a protrusion there. That may actually be the right screw. I'm not sure. And then just go ahead and fill in the rest. So another short screw below here. I think these probably are the right screw. I don't know why they did that. Yeah, just a little bit of, but not anywhere near what the other ones were in terms of extending into the line case. Those won't cause any issues there. Right, take finish that side, come over and finish this side. We'll go ahead and finish the externals. And grab that gear sleeve spacer. The cleaned up star adjuster. There's 2 sides on the star adjuster. There's a rounded side and there's a side that has the part number on it, usually. Here it is right here. Make sure that the side that has the part number on it goes facing the inside of the wheel. Come on over and grab your handle then. And then tighten down your star adjuster before you put the handle screw on. The reason why you do that is if you don't tighten down the handle, you're going to trap the star adjuster and you're not going to be able to move it to adjust your drag. All right, I'm using a aftermarket wrench I get asked on from time to time. That is an Allen Tanny wrench. It's available through mysticparts.com. I think it costs around $20, $25 maybe. If you work on a lot of Penn reels, go get it. If you don't work on a lot of Penn reels, use the wrench that Penn gave you. You don't need that. All right, tie down screw for the handle screw. Gears are in place. We're in the off position. That's how we set it. I guess it's the on position. It says off. Give it a spin. Now I hear a little chirping, and the spools can be adjusted using this. Now what happened, if you recall, we put grease into both sides. So that's taking up the space and probably keeping the spool a little tight at the moment. Just you can use it as it is. You can back this off a little bit. Use it as it is, and eventually it's going to wear right out on that grease. Let's give it a ride. Look at that. This reel is from the 1950s. And boy, if it isn't ready to go fishing again, it's a nice performer. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I think I would hope that if I had done a video earlier, that this one has some facets of it that I didn't do before, and that you've enjoyed them all. To our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you do during the pandemic in particular. I appreciate all of your efforts. And to everyone, have a great day. Good luck fishing. Stay safe and stay watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.